Good day, ladies and gents, my name is Geoff and I'm disgusting, and I'm also a bit upset today. And I'm upset for a number of reasons. First of all, it would seem that the universe always has to balance out the good and the bad, but it just seemed to me that it's a little bit out of balance lately, because after the last video that I made about GOG Good Old Games announcing and launching their game preservation campaign, which I think it's absolutely amazing, it finally seemed that some good things are starting to happen in the gaming community, which we badly needed after all the controversy, all the bad takes, and all the damaging things that a lot of people and a lot of news agencies are trying to do, from painting gamers as the bad guys, from trying to slander good games that are actually made to entertain people, all the way to promoting games that are nothing else than pure activism propaganda with gaming elements in it. And I thought to myself, yeah, we are finally starting to get some good things, the tide is turning, we're going to be seeing more good things come along. And I genuinely thought that this would be a start of good news from all over the place, from different sources, from different companies and so on. But no, what actually happened is that I saw a tweet which turned into many tweets and many reposts and many discussions on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, about something that I think should not even be allowed to happen. And I'm just going to show you what this thing is. So this is a tweet from the account Moriarty, which I saw through Grumps and later Smash JT reposting it, about Geoff Keighley, who is the host of the Game Awards, trying to patent the term the Game Awards. This is with the US Patent Committee. This is an official form that was filled and was submitted to be reviewed and hopefully for him accepted. And this is to me something that should not be allowed, especially in a world that is supposed to be democratic, free to open discussion and free to be able to tell your own piece, have honest competition and so on. What does this mean exactly? If you patent a word or a number of words and you trademark it as your own, then by definition anyone who tries to use the same term basically either has to negotiate the rights to do it under many conditions, or they have to pay a price, or they're not allowed to do it at all. And when you have the Game Awards, which is the event where, as you know, games are judged and given the title of the Game of the Year, and they have different awards and everything else, that means that nobody else can use these exact words in this order for anything related to a Game Awards. And why am I saying this? Because we have the real Game Awards, which is from Sidescross, from Stuttering Craig. That is an initiative that they are making, which is an alternative Game Awards show that they're going to be hosting and bringing to the people. And what is the difference between the real Game Awards and the original Game Awards? The original Game Awards have a 90 to 10% ratio in favor of game journalists and professional critics with very huge quote marks that are basically the ones to determine which game is worthy of those titles. And if you have seen any of my videos and any of the videos from channels like mine, you will know that these judges and critics are all biased towards games that aren't exactly made to entertain people. They're biased and they're under the umbrella of the activism movement that is seeping through gaming like a plague, and they don't really care about gamers and people who actually play the games and pay the money and have all the right to decide which game is good and which is not, because at the end the game is made for the customer and the customer has to have the say. But no, with the Game Awards you have 10% participation, which is pretty much nothing if you ask me, because 90% of the vote comes from the critics. And so Geoff Keighley in all of his absolute wisdom, decided that the Real Game Awards apparently is something that threatens the integrity of his show, and decided to do the absolute adult and smart thing, which is, instead of making changes to better the actual Game Awards show to cater a bit more to the paying customer, to the gamers, he decided to run off to the, in this case, mommy, and to tell and try to censor everyone else, including the Real Game Awards. And by trying to patent the words, this basically means that anyone, including Stuttering Craig, who tries to use those words will be liable to be sued or to be fined by official government agencies, which is absolutely incredible for me. And it's incredible because I, as someone who doesn't live in the United States, am just baffled that someone can actually censor words. It is baffling to me that language as a whole can be censored, especially in a country that rides on the wave of freedom. Ever since the Iron Wall dropped here in the Balkans from the early 90s, we have been told that this is the most free country in the world. You can be whatever you like, you can do whatever you desire, you can make it. It's the country of the free. And this does not look like freedom. This looks like extreme censorship of the likes of communist countries, because the premise is, if you remove the ability of the other side to say anything, then you remove the problem and you remain the only voice in the industry, which is oppression of the highest order. And it reeks of fear, because Geoff Keighley is, in my opinion, absolutely afraid of two things. First of all, how low of a turnout the Game Awards will have this year, because gamers have started to awaken, they have started to push back against the narrative and against the companies, against the certified reviewers and so on, and voicing their opinion much more loudly than before. There has been a monetary pushback against bad games, against propaganda games. And we have seen this with Dragon Age the Veilguard, with Dustborn, Concord, you name it. And the other thing he's afraid is, while his Game Awards show will have a low turnout, the Real Game Awards from Stuttering Craig and the other people that are connected to him will have an much increasing audience that will probably not overshadow this year's Game Awards, but after this event, it will be a much more desirable for the next issues for next year and the years afterwards. And this is exactly what people like Geoff Keighley are afraid, and that's why they're trying to censor it. Now, don't get me wrong, I am all about protecting intellectual property for something that you've worked hard and etc, but this is not the way. You have something established that you claim it to be a prestigious award show that has been around for a lot of years. So doing something like this just reeks of you trying to be the only one in the scene, because if there are no people to pose a problem, then there is no problem. But that is not true. That is what was taught during the socialist regime here. You remove the person causing the problem and there is no problem. But there is actually a problem. There is a problem that your Game Awards show is so out of touch with gamers, with the actual paying customer, that it is extremely controversial to even have it, because gamers don't like what you're bringing to the table. They don't like what the media is bringing to the table, and they're starting to fight back. They're starting to take back the control that they initially always had but never exercised, because they had initial trust and they were later just not motivated enough to speak up. But that has changed. These are the 90% of the people and the companies that will going to vote for Game of the Year. And I just want to point out that almost all of these have had a hit piece, if you will, that was targeted directly against either gamers, against YouTubers, against games that were actually good and were false, like in the case with IGN and Black Myth Wukong, or with Kind of Funny, who targeted Smash JT and basically posted very false information just for a hit piece, just to get some clout. And you have a lot of companies that are so out of touch and they follow the same narrative as the other. It's like a big cult of people who are just reposting, saying the same thing and trying to push a narrative of language and of events that are trying to shape what they believe is the truth. And actually Grumps here had something to say about all of them, and I'm going to show you that. Pride, a web mag that doesn't even focus on games and exists solely to push activism. IGN, everything is a 7. This is a running meme. And Stellar Blade is killing women. You know about that because they were shouting about unrealistic female expectations, even though if you know the main protagonist model for Stellar Blade, Eve, is directly modeled after the developer's wife, and she looks exactly the same. And PR, famous for the neutral reporting, quote marks, and also little to nothing to do with video games. So we currently have 2 of 3 companies that I just mentioned that almost have nothing to do with gaming on a Games Award show. PC Gamer, who just published the BS ADL report about Steam normalizing hate and extremism, which is basically they're speaking about people who speak against the narrative and have an honest opinion about the reviews and about the games. And he finishes, none of this represent gamers or what gamers value. Most of these outlets have slandered gamers, gaslit them, or pushed for DEI in gaming. And he also adds that probably Wukong and Stellar Blades will be snubbed, Dragon Age Vanguard will be lauded and propped up, which is something that a lot of people, including me, do think about. Imagine companies like these being the 90% of the voice of the things you play. Now, whatever you might think about the Game Awards and the game being labeled Game of the Year or whatever, this is still something that is important to game companies and to game developers, because titles like these make investors be more interested in future reiterations of a game or a franchise or even a project. Because if you have proven that you have a Game of the Year material on your hands and you've won the prize, then that means you're a bit more favorable to get more money or more investors for your next project, and you're going to have a little bit more of professional integrity in terms of financial investors, a lot of them who actually don't know much about video games and they just want to invest in a company and they're interested because the company is doing good, and these things are basically making the company look good. So even though you might think that an award like this is nothing in the terms that if a game is good, people will play it, sure, but to investors and to future prospects, this is something important still. And when you have these companies that have pushed one single narrative and trying to dismiss actual gamers and their opinions in favor of just a narrative that I don't think that they actually support with their hearts, but they're getting a lot of money to push it, then the whole thing just crumbles because it's a house of cards in Chicago. You don't have any integrity. It was only natural that someone would fight back, would gain enough followers and enough subscribers on YouTube and enough of a community and enough of resources to just create something of their own. And Stuttering Craig and his team were honest enough that they do require a subscription, a monetary subscription from the gamers themselves and from the people who would actually see the real Game Awards. And they were pretty honest that they needed because it was funding and it was privately funded. But with that subscription, you get all the voting rights. You get to be the voice. You get to express your opinion, and it's giving you power as a gamer, as someone who has paid the money to play these games, to review them, to experience them, to get your piece because you're the paying customer. You're not a huge gaming journalist company or whatever. You're a person, and the real Game Awards, it's basically telling you, yes, your voice is what matters. And that's what has people like Geoff Keighley trembling in their pants, because people gaining control, ordinary people gaining control in an industry that is highly dominated by very controlled narrative group that want to promote only specific things, is something that keeps a lot of them, including Geoff Keighley, awake at night, because that would mean that they can no longer maintain control and they will have to actually backtrack and admit defeat. And when you're in a position like that, doing something like this is absolutely out of the question, because That means that you would anger a lot of people that are paying you probably, and you would also be rendered obsolete in this case. And I'm continue to be pissed, and I hope that this trademark application doesn't go through and they don't label it, because it will be a huge blow to gamers, and it will be just another spark that fuels the war between gamers and companies. It will bring much more divide in a time when we have to be closer together. And actually, having Geoff Keighley say the following thing on the last Game Awards.
This is a show about bringing our community together in this room and online around the world to focus on something we can all agree on. There's nothing more powerful or more immersive than an extraordinary video game.
It just doesn't make sense. People are remembering more, and they're calling out behaviors like this left and right, and this is abhorrent behavior, and this is something that should not exist. And that's why gamers and people in the entertainment industry, ordinary people like me, like Smash JT, like other YouTubers, are fighting back. And whatever happens, the gaming industry is changing forever, and it needs to return to form and cater to the people that are actually paying for their products. This is something that I will continue to say in every video that I make about this, because it needs to become a mantra. We are the paying customers. We play the games. We should have the voice. And that is the fight. And the fight is just. Thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you for sticking around for so long if you did. If you enjoyed my video, click the like and subscribe buttons on my channel. And if you want to support me directly, click the join button and become part of the Disgusting army with the 3 tiers that I have laid out with amazing perks in my opinion. If you also want to support homeless animals and animals in shelters, in feeding them, finding them a home and getting them treatment, visit my Patreon page and become a member there for any of the tier. It will be a great help to support stray animals, and you can also follow me on all of my socials that are in the description below. Thank you for watching. My name is Geoff. This was Disgusting, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers and stay fresh.